Hello and welcome to Power Hour. Today's topic is going to be how to create Microsoft forms that involve adding attachments to them and then controlling where those attachments go in SharePoint and put them in certain folders, changing the file names, and even adding metadata to them via a flow. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty. It's a little kind of odd and complicated. So welcome to the show. All right, I'm Laura Rogers, and this is Joelle Jobson in the window. And we are IW Mentor, that's our company, and we have been doing this Power Hour for, I think, 13 years, and it's geared towards business users and power users, and it's usually not anything super complicated, or we're not programmers, so we just go over all these topics in Microsoft 365, and today's we're delving into Microsoft Forms and how to deal with those attachments. So it's just to kind of level set here. With Microsoft Forms, you can get to it from the waffle menu in Microsoft 365, or you can go to forms.microsoft.com. And when you're building forms and you add it and you want people to be able to submit a form with an attachment, then there is not a way, if you want to have an anonymous form, there is not a way to have an anonymous form and have attachments. So attachments is still going to be, they have to log in, they have to have credentials and authenticate into your tenant to fill out this form if they're going to add attachments. So that has not changed. There's no anonymous. So this is always just going to capture who that person is, and they have to authenticate to do this. But when you create an individual form and you have attachments, the attachments go into your OneDrive. You, the person who created the form, they go into your OneDrive. And if you create a group form, the attachments just automatically go into SharePoint, just into the main document library in SharePoint, into just this default location. So the idea here is that, and so I'm going to give an example of one that I did for a customer fairly recently, is that people, when they have a new project, they're filling out a project form, a Microsoft form, and they're saying what the name of the project is, and of course all the project metadata, the start date, the project manager, all the information you need about a project, and then they're attaching any kind of relevant files to that project. So what I want to happen is, instead of all that, the form and the files just getting dumped into that generic document library on a site, I want to specifically have a folder created for that project and with the project name on it. And I want to put the files in that folder, and even you can add metadata to the files as well. So metadata, which could be information from the form they filled out. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show you what I'm referring to. So I'll do a test one. And what I have is I've created a flow already. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you what the flow does, and with a completed one, and then I'll go ahead and we'll build it completely from scratch. So this is, obviously I didn't spend a lot of time creating a big complicated form, because it's not about the form, it's about what we're doing with this flow that we're creating. So I'm just going to make up a project number, and you'd be answering all of your questions or whatever is in the form. And then I can attach some files. I can attach, just put a couple of files on here. And whenever you're creating a Microsoft form, you do have the ability to control how many attachments they're adding. So you could even have multiple different upload file questions. You could say, here, add an attachment. That's your project charter. And that could be the project charter attachment, and you could limit it to just one file. And then you could say, you could have another question that says supporting documents, and you could say that could be files, and that could be multiple files. So you have the ability, you're not just stuck with kind of like a SharePoint list item where you just have attachments and that's all there is to it. This is, you can have specific, like, separate questions, each with their own attachments if you wanted to. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this. So that was project number 78965. And I'll go to my flow. And so what I want to show you, so the flow's running, but here is my just my little test site that I have the files going to. Let me zoom in a little bit more. And this documents, this is the generic, this is the location where it puts them. Now, your library is going to say apps, then it's going to say Microsoft Forms. This is just what it creates. And then I think when I was creating this form and I was testing it, I actually started testing it and submitting things before I even named my form. So it says untitled form here. So your library is going to say whatever you name your form. So mine just says untitled form here, but yours is going to have your specific name of your form as this sort of third level of the folder. And then you could have, depending on how many questions you have that involve attachments, you could have multiple folders, let's say like question 1, question 2. So my form only has one question that has attachments. And this is the default folder where it's putting things. Now, I built the flow so that it lets it put it in this default place. I left one file in here just to kind of show you what it looks like. And so what it's doing is it's taking it from the default location, the flow is, and it's putting it in a specific place in a specific structure that I want, and then it's deleting the original. So I just left this one in here. This is an earlier one that I was testing just to kind of show you what it looks like in here. But this is the other library that I created. So this is the actual place that I want them to go. Now, your library where the files are ultimately getting stored, you don't have to have that on the same site. So this is just the site where the files are landing and just by default. But you could actually create a completely different SharePoint site, and you could take that file and just completely move it. So it doesn't even have to, so I just created a separate library in the same site to keep it simple, but you don't have to even have it in the same site. So this is the syntax that I decided upon was I'm going to say whatever project number they give it, and then I just have it tacking on today's date, just because sometimes I just like to make sure that it stays unique. So this is, and I'll show you how to do this syntax in the flow. So it creates the folder, and then here are the 2 attachments that I added. And so as we do this demo, I'll show you how you can even add metadata columns and have it, putting even more information in here about these files. All right, so, and remember last, I think 2 weeks ago, Power Hour, we did document sets. So instead of creating a folder, you could even maybe have it create a document set and kind of tie all that together. But I didn't want to kind of blend together too many complex concepts into one demo. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you like that concept of document sets and you kind of have that on lock and you want to try those, you learned a couple of weeks ago, just keep in mind that could be implemented in this situation as well. So, all right. So if you had multiple questions you were asking them, you could even put the files they're responding with in multiple different libraries, or you could just say like this project folder is going to get just all the files that they dump in here. So, all right. Makes sense. Cool. And you all, in the chat, it's good to have your questions. So if this is the first time you're joining Power Hour, we have a button, a link, we're underneath wherever you're watching this video to request to join in Teams, and you can chat with us. So this is our little chat, our live chat, where we're asking questions as we go and having a good time over in Teams. So you join it's going to be the Power Hour general channel, and then the tab for today, and then you can watch the video and chat with us with this little chat bubble. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and I'll show you what the flow did, the one that just ran, and then we'll build it completely from scratch. So what it did when a new response is submitted, it's going to create an array since there could be one or more attachments, an array variable, and then I'm creating a variable for that folder name that I'm creating. And for a form, when they submit a form, you have to do this extra action to get the response details. It doesn't automatically give you all the data from the form, just from the trigger, which is a little odd. So you have to get the response details. Then I'm going to set the variable of the array to that array of files that they've submitted. And then that one's the one where I'm setting the name of the folder. Then I'm creating the folder. And then what I'm doing for each attachment is I'm getting the file content of the original file, creating file in the new place. And then this is where you can update the metadata. And then I'm going to go get the original file and delete it. So I'll go ahead and build that from scratch for you. Okay, so I'm going to turn this other one off so that, because I'm just going to use the same form. So I'm going to turn this other flow off so that it doesn't accidentally kick off if I have two flows for the same form. All right, so when you create a Microsoft form, the trick to, this is important before you even create the form. Okay, so if you just go to Microsoft Forms, and let me just zoom in again. And if you just click new form, that is creating a personal form. That is a my form. And if people submit attachments to it, it will go into your OneDrive. So this is not what we're doing in this situation. We're not doing anything with OneDrive. So what I do is I scroll down, and this is where you can see all of the Microsoft 365 groups you're a member of. And this is where the file is going to go. This is where in SharePoint, that's where it's going to go to that default document library. So you could create a Microsoft 365 group specifically for this form if you wanted to, just so that you have a shared location where the files are going. But this is my SharePoint site, Test One Team. And so when I'm in Microsoft Forms, before I create the form, I go to Test One Team. And so this is where I'm, this is going to be, and it says group forms, and I'm creating a new group form. So I'm going to do another new group form, test, let's see, new project request. And then I'm just going to do a couple of pieces of metadata just so that we have something to put just in the library when we're adding metadata to the projects. So I'll just say project name. That's much nicer than a project number. I'll make it required. And then I'll just say project date. And therefore, those are just some pieces of data we're going to be putting in SharePoint, just so you can see how that is done. And then here's where you can do upload file. Let's say project files. And this is where you can limit it. So by default, it's limited to just one file. I'm going to say you could have up to 3 files. And then you can also limit the size if you wanted to. And I'm going to make this required as well. So now this is called my new project request. And now when I go, let's see, go out of it and go back in and refresh this, now I have my new project request. And so this is the one this is going to be a new concept. Now I'm just going to use this same site, and I'm going to have project submissions. So I'm going to be doing the same, it's going to be in the same place as this other one that I showed you. But we're just going to build it from scratch, and we're just going to say maybe make the folder names have the name of the project instead of these ugly numbers. And then I'm going to add a new column here, and I'm going to say this will be the project date. So that I can demonstrate how to add that metadata also. All right, and okay. So there's my metadata. Now let's go over to the flow and create a new flow. And I always just like to skip that little wizard there and make sure I'm zoomed in so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so my trigger, let's see, I'll call this project demo 2, just so I don't get it mixed up with the other one. And my trigger is a Microsoft form. Then that's the only trigger, is when a new response is submitted. And here's where you pick a form. So notice that this is only showing the My Forms here, unfortunately. So it's not even showing me my group forms. So step one, you already have to kind of hack into this thing. So I'm going to go back to my form here. And this is the test project form with attachments. Let me see, make sure I'm doing the right one. So this is the new project request, is the one that I just built. So I'm going to go to my form, and since the form is not listed, it doesn't say new project request anywhere in here, I have to use the ID of it. So I'm going to go custom value, and I'm going to go find this ID equals in the URL. I know that's such a pain. And so you're going to find ampersand ID equals in the URL, and you're just going to get everything after that. So you're just going to copy that to the clipboard. So I'm going to go paste that right here. So that is my form ID, unfortunately. So then the next thing I'm going to do is what I really have to do is get the form response details, but I'm going to go ahead and it's always good to initialize the variables or as the very first actions in the flow. So I'll just do a couple of variables real quick. So I'm going to initialize var array files. And then that's an array. And it's just empty. And I'll just say initialize variable array. And then I'm going to have a variable for the folder name. And I'll just call it var folder name. Make it a string. All right. So then the next thing is to go ahead and get the response details. So for that Microsoft form. And so the form ID, same thing. It's not listed here, so I just have to paste it in there. And then the response ID is just going to be the response ID from the trigger. Okay, so now I have my form response details. So now I have all the information I need. Once it goes, then I'm going to have all the data from that form that got filled out. So the first thing that I'm going to do is set my variable array. And this is the first tricky, just very messy, concept in here, is to just be able to get the array of files. So before I set the variable, I want to show you what this raw data looks like. I want to show you how messy it is. So I want to go ahead and just run this and get the response details, and then show you what that raw data looks like, so it will make more sense as far as why we're doing this weird thing that we're about to do with JSON to be able to get that file array. So the flow's been created. So I've got project demo 2. And so this is going to be my new project request. So I'll preview it and just say, I'll just call it test 1 project and my project date. And I'll just put a file in here. All my little demo files. I picked the smallest file, so it'd be very fast. Okay, there it goes. So new project request. So that should trigger the flow now. So here's my project demo 2. And these trigger pretty fast. They trigger way faster than when you're trying to do SharePoint when an item is created trigger. All right, so here's my get response details. This is what I wanted to show you. So here is the raw outputs of what I'm doing in here. I've got, so let me just grab this thing, this body. All this stuff up here doesn't really matter. It's the body down here that's got the actual metadata from the form that got submitted. Let me put that in. Let me zoom in. I'll show it to you in Notepad. All right, that's what it looks like, but you can see, like, here's the file that I submitted. So you're going to have the word name here in the file and then a closing brackets. And then you're going to have, this will be like in here a couple of, if you have a couple of files, it'll kind of look like this, where it'll have these multiple sort of blobs with the file name in each different section. So this is what I'm dealing with, is this raw data. So this is where the name, this is really the actual question here. So this is the question in the form of what the project name is. This is the question of what the project date is. And this thing is the question of what the response is. So that's kind of what it's just so you understand when you're dealing with these things, what that, why it's so weird and ugly. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and edit this some more. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and set that array now. Joel, does anybody have any questions so far?
I don't think there's any to answer right now.
Okay, thanks. All right, array of files. So this is where I have to do this kind of weird JSON thing. So I'm going to go to my function, and I'm going to do JSON. And then I'm going to go to my dynamic content and go to my project files question. So it's JSON, and then this is just the output of, this is that weird, field name that I kind of pointed out in here, this thing that ends with 3C. And so that's what it's using to go get the details. So it's creating an array that's basically going to look like this, going to have this information in the flow. You don't have to know what any of this means. So I'm not a dev, and I just kind of like, hack into these things and figure out how to get it to work. You don't have to know how to write code to do this. So I'm just setting the variable of the array, and then now it's up to you in your business solution what you would want that folder name to be. So, you don't have to have a folder, but this is just a very common thing when forms are being submitted, to want to have the files that were submitted be in a folder. So we're creating a folder, and I'm creating like a naming convention for the folders, but this is just, an idea of what you could be doing. So I'm going to say the value of the folder name is going to be the project name. Now, have project name, and technically you'd have to rely on that project name always being different. And if somebody filled out a form and typed the same project name again, then you might end up with a duplicate, or the files would all go back into that original folder that already existed possibly. So project name, you're not guaranteed for it to be unique. So then what I'm doing after that in kind of my other example is I'm just going to take today's date and just tack it onto the end. So I'm just going to put a project name hyphen, and then I'm formatting today with like this. So I'm just project name and today's date. So that kind of is better at making it unique, just in case. I always have to think about those things. All right, and then the next thing I'm doing is I'm going to go ahead and create that new folder. SharePoint, create new folder. And remember, this is where I was talking about where the document sets we talked about a couple of weeks ago, you could actually do create new document set if you wanted to. So it's another great use for that little known technology. So I'm just going to create a new folder, and I'm just going to say this is in my test team, and this is where I went ahead and I created another library in my site. So I just went to my SharePoint site, to the home page, and I just clicked new library and blank library. And so that's why now I have the default document library, but now I also have project submissions. So project submissions is my other library. And then this part is a little tricky. So I'm going to say, if you wanted to have multiple levels of folders, this is kind of the structure that you'd have to have if you wanted to have the year/project name or something like that. I'm going to keep it really simple, and I'm just going to take my variable of the folder name, and that's going to be what it creates. So I just say this is the library created in, this is the name of the folder, and that's all there is to it. And then the next thing is where I'm going to do something with each attachment. So I have to do a loop, apply to each. And my thing that I'm looping through is that list of files that were attached. So I'm going to say apply to each. And then now if you had multiple file attachment questions in your Microsoft form, you would be then creating multiple array variables and doing this kind of multiple times down the flow. So this is just that one array that I'm looping through. So this is what I'm going to loop through, and then I'll say apply to each attachment. And in here, I'm going to go ahead and I have to go get the file content of that original attachment that was submitted. So it's going to be get file content using path. Where's that? It's kind of hard to find things in here. I don't see it. That's so frustrating when I'm like trying to find it really quick. Let me just search for it. Hold on. Get file content. There. There we go. There it is. It was probably just right in front of me. I didn't see it. All right. So then what I'm going to do is go point to that same site again, and then go find that file. So this part's a little tricky too. So first of all, I have to go drill down to that, that automatic folder that it creates. So it's going to help as you're building this flow to have already just at least submit one form with an attachment on it so that it automatically creates these folders for you, because they will just be there. So here's this is the new project request. This is that form that I just created for you with the one with the project date on it. And then question, since it only has one question. So now I just click on question, and I don't want that one, but yeah. So I don't want like this file name in here because that's going to be dynamic. So here's the part where it's really just, you have to paste this code in here, and because it's not going to be easily findable just in the user interface. So I have to go insert expression, and then I have to use this items apply to each attachment name. And so this is just the syntax. So you can just, I'll just paste this in the chat. And this is just the syntax that you'll have to use to go get the name. So you're getting the file name of the attachment. So when if you're digging through the JSON, that raw data, see how it says name with a lowercase n? And then it's got the file name. That's what I'm getting. So I'm getting that tiny little piece of data out of all this stuff. So this is where I can get that and click add. Now be sure and put a backslash here, because as soon as you start doing your expression, it's going to remove the backslash. So be sure and go back in there and type it again. So this is the file content that I'm going to get, because once I have the file content, then I'll be able to go create that file wherever I want to. So then the next step is going to be create a file, SharePoint, create file. And this is the part where I was saying you don't even have to create it on the same SharePoint site. You could go to just any other site and create that file. So I'm just keeping it simple. I'm creating it in this project submissions library. And so that's the library I'm creating it in, but I need to add that folder name. So my dynamic content is the variable that is that folder name that I'm creating with the project name in it. So again, it's another spot where you have to, even if you type that backslash, or instead of, yeah, it's a backslash. Even if you type the backslash, it's going to disappear. You just have to retype it back in there. So here, this is for file name. I have to do that weird thing again with just pasting this code in here. Items apply to each attachment name. And I'll click add. And then the file content is just from this previous action where I got the file content. So that one's pretty easy. It's just file content right here. Okay, so that's going to create the file in SharePoint in that other location. And then If you have metadata, this is where you could do the update file properties. So SharePoint update file properties right here. And I'm going to that new location that I just created the file, project submissions, and then the ID is going to be that ID of the file that I just created. So that's the item whose properties I want to update. And then I've got the, let's see, project date. That's the one that I want to populate. So that's where I'm going to go get my project date here and put that in the column. So you could have a lot of columns. I just kind of was keeping it simple and not too time consuming. So I just created one, but you could have a columns for every single question on your Microsoft form. And then it would just fill all that data in for you. Now, here's the next part where, you don't have to do this, but it kind of keeps it nice and tidy, is to go ahead and delete that original file. So the only way that I can obtain what that original file is, I know this is weird, is by the file name, because nowhere in this flow do I have the ID of that file. So if I had the ID of the original file that got created when the form got submitted, then I would be able to just do delete item and just point to that ID. But since all I have is the file name, I have to do yet another kind of messy, complicated thing. And I have to do SharePoint get files. So if you don't know the ID of a file, even if you just only want to get one file, you still have to use the get files if you're going to go get files by some other property. So I'm going to go get that original file. So I have to point to that documents library where it originally dropped. And then the ID, let's see. Then my filter query. So I'm going to do a filter query and I'm going to do a limit entries to folder. So I don't need to worry about any of the other folders that might be in that library. So I'm just going to do the folder first. And I'm going to say shared documents, apps, Microsoft Forms. This is my new project request and my question folder. So that narrows it down. And then here, yet another kind of messy thing is file leaf ref that's the system name for the file name in SharePoint. I know it's so obscure. So equals, and then this is where you have to give it yet again that that attachment, apply to each attachment name. So I'm saying that's it, just the same thing I keep pasting into my clip for my clipboard. And then be sure and put single quotes around these. So file leaf ref equals, and then it's going to be that file name. So that's how I'm getting, and it's just going to get that one file with that name. And then that's when I have to delete it. So then so I'll do I'm going to do a delete item, and you'll see why. Delete file requires this like identifier, and delete item is very simple and it just requires the ID. So I discovered in this process that it's just a lot easier in this case to just delete the item. And then it doesn't give you, when you use delete item, that's used usually for lists. So since I only have names of lists here, I don't have libraries, I just have to type documents here. And then the ID is going to be the thing that I just got from my get files action. So then it automatically is going to put a loop around it. So it's only going to get one file. And then for each file, it's going to delete that original item. So let's go ahead and save that and run it and see how it goes. And see about your questions or any kind of like other permutations you have in mind of how you'd want that to work. So now I have my new project request. I'll do submit another response, and I'll just say George. I like George Jetson. It's my George Jetson project. There's my date, and I'll just put a couple of just little small test files. I have these like little company policy files I always use for these demos. So here are my, and I limited it to 3 files. So those are my 3 files, and submit. And again, it's going to kick off pretty quickly. So here I can see it running. Now it's running, and I could probably, if I go and look, I can probably see in documents, I'm going to see that file appear here. See, under new project request, under question. So those are the files that I just submitted. So right now the flow is still running. So the files are here in the original location. So what the flow's doing now, look at it, watch, it's deleting them. You can see them disappearing one by one. So it's going through its process and it's deleting the files. Let me refresh it. Hopefully it worked. Yeah, it's gradually deleting the files. So it's going and getting the name of each one and then deleting it. So it's got, I'll refresh that again. It's still going. Hopefully it's not, yeah, it ran successfully. So go back. I'm not sure why that one is still in here. Oh, that's from 17 minutes ago. That's an older one. Okay, that's okay. That was before the flow was doing something with them. And then I go to project submissions, and here's my George Jetson folder. And then here are my 3 files, and then here the project data is filled in. Golf clap, yay. So let's see, let's go to your questions and see what we got. Yeah, it takes a couple of minutes. So let's see. I see that Carolyn has a question. I'm going to answer. Oh, wait, no, that's Annette. So I'm going to answer Annette's question, Joelle. Just let me know. I was just kind of scrolling up and down through the questions. Just let me know if there's another one. She said, since guests can't upload files, can you have them fill out the form, including a field for them to enter their email address? And then your workflow creates the folder in the document library, creates a sharing link, and then sends an email to the submitter with a link to the folder with instructions for them to upload their named files. Oh, that.
Yeah, you can do that.
Joelle, what are you saying, Joelle?
Yeah, you can, because it is possible to do that.
Because I worked with it's so sad that it sounds like such a roundabout way to have to do that. Have y'all seen the request files feature in here?
Yeah, that's the other one that clients use.
I don't know if I have it turned on in this tenant. I did a whole other power hour about the request files feature. So again, I don't think I have it turned on in this tenant, but there's basically, if you have sharing enabled for the whole tenant, for SharePoint and OneDrive, you have a button here that says request files, and then it would just let you send an email to a person and just say request files, and then they would just literally click the button and upload their files. So the problem with that, though, is it doesn't have metadata. So hopefully Microsoft will get something that kind of bridges the two needs, but it's like the request files feature in combination with the forms. Yeah, that does. Tony says, I suppose there's some sort of response ID when the initial flow runs that can be sent out in an email that can return with the attachment some sort of line reference. Yeah, that's okay. So there's another thing you can do. Just another way, if you want to get files from external people, is that every channel in Teams has a you can get an email address to that channel. So if you have external people that you need to be able to send emails to you and have them land in SharePoint, inherently every channel in Teams is a folder in SharePoint. So you could just use this generic email address that you get and give it to your customers, and then have them, you have some options here, and have them just email to that email address. So that's another and potentially you could do that with the actual folder that it create. Like here's my test one team. It's got the general folder in here. Hold on, let me see. I've got documents. So it's got this folder called apps that it creates. I wonder if I create a channel called apps, I think it would tie it to that, and then people could mail it and it would go directly into that folder. Anyway, so whatever your folder is in SharePoint, it equals a channel, then you can do that. Any other, let's see. Go back to the chat here. I don't see, is there any questions that I missed here? Yeah, that sounds like I know that you're right. You're right, Annette. That's possible that you could do this roundabout way of having them fill in the metadata and separately sending them an email, but that is very messy, and that there's a lot of kind of room for error there in being able to match the files up with the question. There is an ID. So to answer your question, there is, so that that get response details, it uses that specific form ID. So that is something you could use. It ties it to that form. Let's see. And then it's not just the ID of the form itself, the one we saw in the URL. It's actually the response ID is the response ID to that specific response that the person had. So yeah, so you'll have that. And yeah, so to kind of think about your kind of convoluted way is that you could have your form be anonymous, have them fill out all the questions, get that response ID, have the flow go create the folder, and maybe use the response ID maybe as the folder name or something like that, and then have it send them an email with a link. Yeah, I'm not sure. That is very roundabout. I mean, that's kind of Joelle's screen name used to be SharePoint MacGyver. So that's a very MacGyver-y thing. So it's like over the years, there are less and less things in SharePoint that we have to MacGyver like that. So it just makes me cringe to it be 2025 and still have to MacGyver something. Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, so I was talking about the request files thing, and I was talking about having an email to a Teams channel. But yeah, right when they email things to the Teams channel, then the only metadata you have is their email address and like the subject line, and you have the files they attach. So, yep. All right. Well, I know it's only 11:42, but that pretty much wraps it up. Let's see. Let me go ahead and I like to always say this at the end, we are IW Mentor. Go to iwmentor.com. This is where all the training courses are. We have plans, we have individual courses, and here is where the schedule is to find out when the next power hours are going to be. Next week, I'm going to be in Atlanta. I get to visit Joelle. I'm going to be in Atlanta speaking at TechCon. I'm actually going to be doing an all-day workshop there on Power Automate on this upcoming Tuesday. And then we have Power Hour the week after that. And so you can just always be able to see when they're upcoming, and go ahead and request to join our newsletter. There's a link underneath wherever you're watching this video to join the newsletter. And then that way you'd be able to vote on topics and have your voice heard and get to control kind of, what we talk about each power hour and get all our updates. So thanks everybody for coming, and I will not see you next week, but I'll see you on the 20th. Thanks, Joelle.